Hello, welcome everyone. We're just going to wait a few seconds to make sure that everyone is in. Can you please let us know in the chat on the right-hand side if you can hear us well? Okay, I guess, yes, perfect. Thank you so much, guys. So let's start. Hello, once again. Welcome to our webinar, Application Modernization, How to Scale Monolithic Apps. My name is Karolina. I'm a CMO at Boldare, and I'll be your host today. During today's webinar, we will talk on what should influence your modernizing and scaling decisions, what are the strategies and approaches to scaling, and how Agile approach can help. Just a few words of introduction before we start. The webinar is hosted by Boldare. We are a digital product design and development company with over 16 years of experience, 170 experts on board, over 300 web and mobile applications developed, and 170 clients on our roster. We help companies big and small build digital products and go through a process of digital transformation to prepare them for the future. You can find out more about us by visiting boldare.com. And now let me introduce you to today's speaker, Mateusz Grzesiukiewicz. He's a senior software engineer and solution architect at Boldare. He will guide you into the world of application modernization, sharing practical insights and tips from almost a decade of experience in various products, most recently for one of our clients, Prisma. After his presentation, there will be a Q&A session with Mateusz, so please post your questions as soon as they come up in the questions tab on your right-hand side. You can also vote for the most interesting questions that will pop up, and those questions will get the priority. Without further ado, I'm passing the mic to Mateusz. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Karolina. I will now share my screen. And let's see. You should see now, again, the main slide. So we're going to talk about scaling monolithic applications and my experience, especially with Prisma company, because based on that story, I will hands-on show how we did that, how the company moved through different challenges, and basically we'll pass some of the knowledge to you. And without further ado, as said, let's prepare you for a battle. And the battle is quite complex. There will be challenges and problems that you will face. That, for instance, the technologies, you will need to probably to adopt new technologies. Sometimes you will find a new breakthrough in terms of the code, in terms of the solutions, in terms of the third-party apps. That's very common during your journey through modernization, and those might in fact imply further investments into the talent pool, etc. So that's pretty complex topic, and along with it goes the maintenance costs and the tech stack that gets huge at some point. So basically you need to go through some form of a transformation along those days to achieve the modernization, sometimes even to rewrite and play around with your application, how to basically deliver value for the end customer much faster. So expect missed deadlines or missing talent, such stuff, but don't be too scared. That's why such companies like Boldare exist, and here I am to also guide you through it. And in case those problems arise, just let us know. And Prisma is a specific company specializing in providing the capability to sell the capacity of gas to basically anyone that is interested in. So this is a platform where both parties take place, like the owners of the pipes who have the hardware, let's say, who want to like use the pipes and sell the capacity, and the other side who wants to like put the gas through and receive it at the other end. And there are multiple regulations, legal stuff, etc. And the platform is not only letting you trade like on eBay, let's say, the normal gas, but here we got a very specific one. The gas movement is really restricted, so it's much more complex, and the platform specializes in it. And here comes the main theme: making fair markets happen. So that's a really nice challenge that I could participate in, and will let you know a little bit more about it. So in Prisma, the modernization started with the infrastructure. So the beginning and the needs we'll talk in a moment, but let's look at the quote from the Prisma's blog. You can Google it. It's switch from single instance server to cloud solution, and why AWS was choice of the company. There's a lengthy blog post about it. Basically, the problems identified were like writing long contracts, negotiating with vendors, and that really slowed down the progress. And we got this customer mindset, and we want to deliver as fast as possible. So that was a challenge, and company decided to go with AWS, and it was really good decision from my, for instance, developer perspective. It really simplifies a lot of things, but obviously it's not that easy. It's easier when you hear it, but then you got this old like servers that you need to put into cloud, and how you do it. We'll talk about it soon, but first let me remind you a very easy concept. You either want to innovate, or you basically let others innovate, and you probably know this already, but let's look at some statistics. I know you love statistics, and here Paul, maybe you know him. And in 2000, we got Europe with 41 companies within the biggest 100, and now it's only 15, as per what Paul said. So that's really interesting and shows how you can like leave behind the peloton. So it's really important to keep that in mind. But innovate may be quite misleading in terms of the wording, as I, as a software engineer, can tell you that it's not refactoring of the application. It's not rewriting screen to another screen. It's not like using this microservices concept that is so popular right now. It's more about solving problems. And to solve problems, you need to know your customer. Basically, that's so simple. So don't be fooled by requests from your tech staff. Oh, we need to refactor this and that. We need to pay the technical debt. You always have to have in mind why you do it and what it's gonna solve, and whether it's necessary or it's a part of the process maybe, or should be. Because when you build a huge debt, obviously then it's gonna blow up at some point. But maybe it should be a part of the process to address it one by one. So that's something to consider, obviously. But customer experience and this obsession, as I mentioned, can be quite simplified to remind you why we talk about it. So this is how I view it. It's not taken from somewhere. It's my perception. So first of all, customer will ask, does it solve my problem? Then maybe it solves the problem and it's quite quick enough. So that's really good sign. The customer will love the product because it's basically working and providing value. But then there is another huge step, and not everyone knows how to get there, or some people do get there and cannot explain it. It feels like customer cannot live without it. And then there's like this Netflix kind of feeling that you talk about it, you ask your people, your friends, like, what do you watch, and etc. So that's completely another level. So, but to get there, it's not that easy. And what I call it is a customer-centric approach. You simply need to get obsessed with your customer, the customer satisfaction. But it sounds like, just words, but we'll get to more down-to-earth things. But first, let me start with the meme. Maybe some of you already saw this meme. I did a couple of times already, so it's well known, but it's worth always showing. It's like what the user asked for. And from my experience in the sales team, because I had the opportunity at Boldare to join sales executives who were like talking with the client, just like you, to hear their ideas, what they need to achieve, what are the struggles. And I usually heard something like this. This is what the user asked for. And when you go a little down in that column, you will see what the user really wanted. And that's really, really what usually happens. So I heard like stripes of information, because how many things you can pass within an hour meeting, like sales meeting. Both parties want to like share some key information, but it's not entire thing. So there must be some other processes that will get there to understand what's really needed and how it should be built. For estimations, maybe what the user asked for is enough, but farther on, you've got to have some more processes. All right, so there is a Master of Scale podcast that I really, really recommend to you. I have collected few of the quotes from that great podcast. So first one is, if you don't know who your customer is, you literally don't know what the word quality means. And that's pretty strong quote, right? But there is 3 following ones that also should somehow push you through this customer-centric. One is about the data, roll around in the data, understand it really well, and then make a gut-based call. And here I will underline this gut-based call. Sometimes data is not enough. You basically cannot like just trust 100% the data, but there is always this gut feeling that you will develop as you more and more look at the data, or at least your analytics people will finally get there if it's a more complicated process. So trust your gut. Sometimes it's really, really useful, but obviously you need data, and as soon as you have data, you need to standardize it. So that's the second quote. Otherwise, you just end up with a huge mess. And then observing the customers, like making sure you understand the user experience. And it would be great if they call it effortless. That would be fantastic. Okay, and as a bonus, in the COVID times, you will, thanks to talking with the customers, maybe defeat the loneliness, which may haunt you from time to time. As we know, leadership is really sometimes a lone job. But we talked about the standardization of the data and the structure. So I wanted to also show you a little bit the analytics on Prisma production. As you can see, whenever we access specific screens and sections, we track it through the software, obviously, and it's pretty well defined how the tracking looks like, what are the properties. So later on, when you collect all of these, you can much quicker jump into the conclusions or divide the section and get to know about the specific areas of your application. So it's really crucial to get this covered pretty quickly. And as you can see, what worked for the company was the interface, section, and screen. When we talk about the graphical user interface, sometimes along many iterations and building the platform, they increased the needs for the subsections as well, so that was added to the tracking. But sometimes we got even a wizard with number of steps. It's like a huge form, right, with a few pages of form. For instance, registration is working like this. So this one is a little bit more complex. So basically, this structure is a public information. It's a front end, so any technical guy could like go and see how the analytics is working and what it's sending. So that's a typical thing on any website you will find. But the structure is key, so later on you can make decisions based on this data. And also worth mentioning, I've spent some time at Atlassian working on a Jira product, so that was a really nice journey to Sydney, spending sunny vacations, and there I learned a lot about the user personas. So we say customer-centric approach and all of these things, but customers may be different. There might be few user personas that you need to be aware of. And those personas you would like to interview. So there is a couple of methods how to do that, but the most challenging one is probably even inviting customers to interviews. And I hear that often. So for instance, Prisma is lucky enough to have willing customers for the interviews, but it's not always the case. So one option is just to paid interviews, like give $50, and thanks to it, you will like attract more attention to the topic. But there is also a nice concept of like giving to the charities. So basically, if your software allows for that, or your like offer of the services allow for that, just give them free to the charities and ask them in return for a comment on user interface and user experience. It's really working well for some of the clients I met at Boldare. So that's a really nice connection. Both you give free of charge your services, but also get something in return, and it's really valuable feedback. So from those customers, it was really like in depth, and they also felt like obliged to give you back something. So that's a really nice story, and I had pleasure of reading some of such interviews. It's really nice. And wireframes. This is something that is a next step. So basically, as you know more about the customer, the user personas, what they might need, you need to come to the conclusion what to build and what are the next steps. And you don't want to end up with half a year of developing code which is not really working and not really satisfying the end user. And for that interviews, I really recommend for you to build a wireframes and prepare some scenarios to the interviewed people, to click through them and observe if they achieve the goal they mentioned, for instance, earlier, that they would like to have X and Y. Then you prepare the scenario, give it to other interviewed person, and with your wireframes, which should be clickable. So it's really easy to implement by a product designer or whoever is like a little bit more into graphics and interfaces. Then basically that wireframe can be prepared in much less time than actual development. So wireframes take like up to 3 days, I would say, very simple ones, but obviously there's like tons of analytics behind it. So let's not simplify as that to that extent. But wireframes is like a key. But eventually the end product will not look exactly the same because you will have few iterations. So if you compare this is much more complicated that we had on the wireframe. And basically that's a really nice journey, removing the sidebar and talking through it and making it expandable. A filter stub, which was discussed many different weeks. So there is a lot of things that can change on this page, and you need to have also focus on specific areas. So be really cautious about this things when you will design the interviews or think about this entire process. But overall, you need to take care of many different things. And this is a slide from Boldare.com that I really like, that shows the main areas that you will put focus, and you do that even without modernization. But this will become a challenge along the changes. So once you start your journey, you will need to choose a technology. So this yellow block you can see, architecture, you will need to rethink the platform support. For instance, in Prisma's case, we had those servers and then a cloud-based technology, and you would need to have a cloud expert, obviously, and how then the platform support works. There's SLA from this cloud provider, right? So you need to incorporate that into your entire process. So there are legal things that also are important. So and the scalability. So you will need to decide that at some point the horizontal will be your point of choice, the vertical, maybe both, and so on. So basically a lot of things, but how to approach all of those stuff. So we got this definition of ready, we got the estimations. Those probably can be done within specific teams, but for them to estimate and to have those stories, there is a long process from the idea to then having a field backlog in Jira. And how do we do that? Actually, Boldare, during this many years of being close to software development, to transformations with the companies, we've built processes around that. So as I told you, I was in a sales department, so I was really close to ideas. But then later on, my colleagues would take over after the deal is done, and we need to put you through from idea to actual actionable steps. So there is this product vision workshops you can see on the bottom of the page, sometimes connected with the user story mapping. So this is where you actually write down the names of the user stories that will end up in a backlog. Sometimes you use methods like a white elephant. You can Google that. This is a method to quickly and roughly estimate high level how much it will take. So this helps you build also the roadmap and plan it and work around that. So you get more and more information how the goal that you want to achieve is playing, and how does it really connect to your this customer-centric approach. So once you know what you want to achieve, come to us, we negotiate, we do workshops, we see, and you got the clear outcomes of that, and you can compare, would that be valuable, basically. And System Story is really, really nice workshop. So have a look at our blog to get more information. But there is also one important bit that usually the designers push for. It's a customer journey mapping. And customer journey mapping is a thing that you will basically build processes around if you really understand customer-centric approach. So if you know your customer is his boss, then you will want to understand how your boss is progressing through your app, through your interfaces. And sometimes I see like really huge applications that people have no idea how to get from one place to another, and only customer knows. So why those people are building a product that they don't know how it works, like collectively, not like in one unit or one little box, I would say. So that's something that is then really painful, and the customer sees that every day using your application. It goes through the customer goes through the process every single day when using your application. And sometimes it's worth noting that many people who build the product don't, and maybe should. So let's incorporate some process to have this in mind, because it's really important to know the journey and simplify this journey. Many UX patterns, you will like talk with your front-enders about the UX patterns, about some like best practices, but they don't come out of nowhere. This is simplifying the journey, and that should be the goal. That's solving the problem. That's not like just to make a prettier button or less buttons or something opening. No, you just want to keep your customer satisfied. But to collaborate and to achieve all of this customer-centric approach and run this really complex workshops, it was pretty easy before COVID, right? It was pretty easy. You would travel to one place on Earth, held the workshop, you will bring your sticky notes and basically spend there 8 hours. And here we go and have an outcome, user stories, everything estimated. But you also need to adopt, because COVID happened and many people want to work remotely, and not only your employees, but also people you collaborate with. And there are tools that we really see valuable in this entire process. Two ones that you might know already, Miro or Mural. Those are basically whiteboards in online space. So it can be used for many different purposes. Just find a Scrum Master and he will show you thousands of ideas how to use Miro and Mural. So basically you can have retros there, you can have product workshops, you can do system story workshops, you can have event stormings there, you can map your domain, you can brainstorm there. So that's a beautiful, beautiful tool. Miro and Mural, your choice, which one is the best. I like both, and recently we also found GatherTown. Prisma used it for on-air so-called event, and it worked beautifully. And then our team also adopted it internally, just to spend entire work day in this little area that basically is a mapping of a physical office into this online space. So you have your office, but open in a Chrome tab. So you can walk around like Mario. This little guy that travels to the map is really looking similar. So we got this bunch of Marios walking through the office, and whenever you are close to your colleague, you basically see their video or hear them speaking, if they obviously turn it on. So it's really nice way of like taking offices to to online. And fun fact, just this week also Boldare started using GatherTown as a company, so we can meet each other in our virtual office as well. I really love that. Okay, maybe much tougher topic, return on investment. And that might be your everyday job, right? Hard return on investment is what you basically look at almost every day. You calculate how much money you got, what are the investments, what is best to invest on. But actually, it's not always the only way to invest and to look at the return on investment. It's not always just numbers. So you get also soft ROI and social ROI. And obviously there are hundreds of things that you will find there, like more customers, ratings, lower costs. That's super simple. But how to look at the teamwork, how to look at the efficiency, how to measure morale, retention, maybe that's still pretty well known. We got some approximations how to do it well, but there is also this social ROI, the culture, the feeling connected, addressing the matters that are important to you, and how to put this online in these COVID times. This is super hard, right? So that's another ROI to look at. Maybe there is also some gut feelings or this question mark. So something that is really, really tough to measure, but you really feel like you should be investing there. So let's look. Stable platform. No SLA breaches. So basically you comply with the SLAs. So that's a hard ROI. But user experience? If you take this customer-centric approach, you will invest some money, you will see gains, but what's the point where we got good enough user experience, or does it change in time? So that's a really tough topic, and you need to also consider such investments. And the hardest one, I would say, at least for me, is a social cost fulfilled, like fair trading platform. Is our platform really like making fair markets happen? That's a really tough question. And how to connect with this with money even. So that's really getting complex. So we got this concept of proof of concepts. We worked with the Prisma for the first time in 2019. We developed a 2 to 3 months pilot project, and then eventually learned a lesson. It was never seen on production, but we still considered it a success. How can it be? We basically validated the hypothesis, and by validating it, we learned it's not a right way. That's also fine. You invest money to get more knowledge. That's what you usually do, right? So it's nothing new. But let me show you a game that you should play. And it's an investments game. So you got your investments that are maybe more brave, and you've got also this stable or so to say well-known investments that you want to keep and you feel comfortable because they yield very predictable results, and which ones you will put money on. So basically these circles, the blue circles that you see here, there will be some ideas. So I had to hide them in this example because this is not a public information, but you can play around this with your self or with your team if you make decisions collectively. So then let's invent a virtual money, or money that basically depicts what you have in a pocket, and see where people will drag actually the $100, or where would they put money on. It's really much different than what they would say without having this a dollar in a hand. So that's really nice game I loved the outcome. 40% money into innovations that we are not really proficient in measuring. So that's brave, at least from my perspective. But obviously, break-even point. That's something you all probably are familiar with. And when you plan ahead, you create your roadmap. You involve the tech department to make more knowledgeable decisions, like you do now. You hear me talking about the tech stuff, but that will help you understand the process of journey of modernization of your apps and taking it to the cloud, for instance. And you measure your progress. You alter this roadmap along days that passed. You sacrifice some areas that does not seem prospective. And there is this Pareto rule, like I really, really love. Basically, it always shows when you have data. So you got this like golden place where whenever you put money, it yields results. So if you can find such places with your data, you got it right. So look for Pareto rule in your data. That's fantastic. Actually, I did this in sales department, and trust me, it worked. So it's really, really nice feeling that something that most people on earth know as they grow older, but it's actually working. And new features. So new features is usually something that we call solving problems, because by new features we usually mean customer asked for this, or we predict they really want it, or we see some analysis, this is what they will want in 3 years, so we prepare for the future. So that's really close to customer-centric approach. So, but when you develop new features, you may find this really dangerous playground where there's technical debt that is not addressed. There's this monolithic application growing and growing, and at some point you will wake up watching this specific presentation, how to modernize my stack now. So maybe you need to learn this fact that you need to really make small steps, because it's not like you will collect like, okay, +1 technical debt per day. No, it's exponential. If you don't address technical debt, it will get exponential pretty quick. So it's not like +1, it's like +2 the other day, +8 the third day. So that's really how it works. All right, so, but you got yourself into this situation, unfortunately, and how to get out of this monolithic application, or how to modernize your app. And there is a really nice concept. Tobias is in depth taking you through. Go to Prisma's blog and maybe read the entire blog post if you are interested. But the approach, they called it lift and shift. So first of all, you lift your stack to the cloud because you can. It will still be slow, so to say, or it will still be like this monolith, but it's already in a cloud, so you can benefit from the cloud environment. You can set up some services in the cloud. You can start using them. You can start like injecting into this old solutions. So it's really, really valuable. But then obviously comes a second step, a shift. So you need to split this application into smaller pieces and eventually migrate to, I don't know, maybe serverless solutions. It's your choice. You need to look at your applications. What are the needs? What's the volume of users? How they use the applications? So basically make knowledgeable decisions. Because from application to application is much different. Me, software engineer, I can tell you, I worked with like 100 applications and every single one was different. And that's why I learned how to be like an architect, how to ask questions like, like challenge them. So sometimes when you have talks like with our company Boldare, we'll ask like difficult questions: how many users you got, like how they use the platform, and what are the third parties services you are connected to, how big is your in-house development team, do you even have it, or what are your plans in 10 years? And it's really taking time to talk about it. So it's not a simple process, but lift and shift is really nice because it lets you use the cloud really quick. And then modernization, the platform infrastructure. We got strategies and approaches. We're a little behind the time, so I will make it a little bit quicker this time. So strategies, we got this lift and shift. We got feature flagging. So this is really problematic because feature flagging is a concept that should be known to not only the tech team, because they will ask for it at some point, but you also need to understand how important it is to like provide services to them. Maybe that will cost like a few $100, but feature flags should be in your application if you are scaling it. So for scaling, feature flagging is like the single best concept I would recommend. First of all, for development, for rolling out, for even assessing whether some customers love it or not, and then switching it off. And getting rid of the release cuts. It's so much 90s. Get rid of release cuts, trust me. CI/CD, such concepts, embrace them, use them, learn from this journey from release cuts to continuous deployment and delivery. That will be also a fun ride. And domain-driven design. If you are really in a complex domain like Prisma in gas movement across Europe, that's super tough topic, right? There's like tons of domain knowledge. You need to understand the regulations. We got some legal obligations to store specific information. And for that, you got to have a domain experts who work closely with your tech department. And usually this tech department will use a concept of event stormings. This is a specific meeting. Really hard facilitation is required, but it helps the tech people understand the domain, so to say. And we got some process boosters. Train excellent facilitator. So it's not that your manager will know how to run a product discovery workshop or how to do the system story workshops. You need to find a right person who knows and have skills. Maybe it should be someone from our Scrum Masters at Boldare. Maybe you should hire somebody. We usually see this pattern that you both like ask us for help, but also at the same time it grows in your culture, and basically as your shift from old patterns to new ones grows, you also train your own in-house facilitator or onboard a new person. So that's a talent pool I was talking in the very early slide. And the second thing, ownership. Always try to assign ownership everywhere. Like someone needs to take off the refinement of specific ticket, assign a person. There is like one thing to be done, but no one wants to do it. Assign a person. You will know who to blame. Obviously, you don't want to blame, but it's really working if you got one person responsible for something. Like when the team is responsible for something, that's really tough. But then the holacracy comes. So if you want to learn how to do it, ask Boldare as well. We got this holacratic, fantastic framework for freedom and basically no managers. So that's also a fantastic concept, but that's beyond today's talk. Acceptance criteria. So that's another thing. When developers build specific feature, they should see acceptance criteria in a story, in a task. That's usually a product person who will put there the acceptance criteria. But if those are really short or not like put entirely, obviously your tech team will implement that. Whatever is not specified can be done as simple as possible, right? So make sure also that the domain experts have enough time for the dev teams. So for instance, if you schedule this event storming to share the knowledge and 2 out of 3 domain experts do not come, it does not make sense. This is not how this event storming concept works. So it's really, really important. And also to have a person who understands these key things about the facilitation and how the workshops or specific meetings should be held, and underline to specific people who should come and make this a priority, right? Otherwise, the meeting has no point. Last topic, agile approach, and this is also a meme, most of you know, really popular one. We got this little box in our company that is agile, so we are finally agile, beautiful. And being agile is also not that easy. So if you never embraced this concept that is in IT quite long with us, we got this Scrum, contrary to waterfall approaches. And this is what, for Boldare, for instance, it's 10 years of practice, but we find more and more people who never seen one and never used like this concept of retrospectives and so on and so forth. And for instance, Prisma also a few years back had this idea to maybe embrace these processes into their everyday work, and now this is like all there in the entire company. So that's beautiful. If you want to understand more how it's connected to the platform, just have a look at the blog post. And a specific excerpt from it is that when they came, much before COVID, but when they came to Boldare office, they've seen this open spaces concept and how it embraces the agile thinking and being connected very close to each other. Then they also were amazed by these values, obvious values from it. As they stayed in our office, they look how people behave, how they connect, and how it's like everyday stuff. So being amazed by that, they even mentioned that in a blog post. So there is also a Spotify, very old post, but from 2013, the skinny agile, so-called. So have a look at that if you've never seen the basic concepts and how should it work. It really explains the concept. I don't want to bore other people, but if you are not into agile, really do your best to get knowledgeable about it, because it's really important. And then you got caveats and extensions of that, obviously, and that's much less common. For instance, scaled Scrum. Scaled Scrum is when you have multiple teams developing one big application, and how do they coordinate? How do we use the domain experts not to like starve some of the teams and work closely, efficiently, so everyone can like put their code on production, so nobody is blocking each other? How to do that? And we got this concept scaled Scrum, but sometimes it's not enough. We got the Nexus from a framework, and there are a couple of golden rules. One of such is team of maximum 10 to 12 people. So that's also like a hard constraint you would need to learn. And I've seen this violated many times. And trust me, then the efficiency of the team always drops. I've seen that. You don't need to trust me, but just Google it. You will find also examples on the internet. And let me underline this. Once again, facilitator is a key person. So Make sure facilitating is done right, so the meetings are not only called like event storming or product vision workshops, it's also done one by one by the book. And I will leave you with this thought. Thank you very much, and hand over to Karolina.
Thank you so much, Mateusz, for your presentation, and thank you for your attention, guys. We just have 10 minutes till the end, but we'll try to answer as many questions as possible. So let's start. There was a question from Jean-Q. From the previous slide, it was the slide with the swing, the meme. What the users really wanted versus what was really provided. What is the disconnect between that? I mean, where the process was lost, I guess. What happened?
Exactly. So when the end product is not what the user wanted, that's really disastrous, and that means there was something going on during the entire development. So I mentioned Agile in the end, so that's where the Scrum shines. You got a piece of the code working and delivering value every like 2 weeks, let's say, or every week, depending on the team, depending on the product, but you measure your success and you know if you are on a good track or not. But also all of those workshops that you have beforehand to make sure we are on a good track, you plan the roadmap. So there is a process, obviously, to achieve that. But the IT is really complex stuff, and the applications can vary, and some people think, oh, I built 3 applications, this time it should be the same, and I will move all the processes, and then it blows up. So it's not really uncommon, but come to us and we'll show you what are the right steps.
Thank you, Mateusz. A question from Jenny. How do you prioritize the backlog between new features, code refactoring, and bug fixing?
Right, so that's a really tough question, right? Wherever I've been in a team, they ask the same question. So it's really common question. And what, for instance, we did, we established a bug management process. So we know how we prioritize bugs, which are what's the urgency, if it's critical, if it needs to be fixed, what's set in SLAs. So that's also like what's making it critical, for instance, and what are the support time ranges. Let's say for some it's 24/7, but not for all of the applications. That also may impact how you should build the process, right? Because if it's 24/7, pager duty is probably something that you will offer to your software engineers, because I will thank you for that. But well, I'm happy enough that Prisma, for instance, is much more helpful to me. It's like we got also in-house developers at Prisma, and we got Boldare, so we collaborate, we think through what should be done and how we should hand over the work, or it's not like one person we sit there 24 hours, right? So this is something to take into account. And also how to prioritize the backlog. That's what should be done by PO, but PO needs to have an input to prioritize, and this is where the team shines. We go to refinements, but obviously then we got 6 hours of refinements per week, and that blows up. So I've seen that. So it's not that beautiful. Then you think maybe for every 3 sessions that each one is 2 hours long, maybe we don't need entire team. Maybe we need 1 session for 2 hours, but beforehand we got people who will pre-refine the tickets, who will look at them, make sure all of the acceptance criteria are clear, if we got the understanding of the monolithic application. Because something that usually slows us down on this refinements is that we did not know how it works. No one deep dived the code, and what can I tell you? If I did not develop the code, I never seen it, and now you ask me for estimation. Not so, come on, it's not possible to like deliver such information. So you need to rethink this process every single time based on how your application really looks like, what's your this monolithic challenges or rewriting challenges. So this is these are the couple examples I give you from our recent teams.
Thank you. And there's a question from Mari. What is the process behind taking over the development of a really complex product?
So a really complex product it's not really that simple how to take over somebody's work or some pretty complex development that was going on for years. For instance, this is our know-how at Boldare. That's what we do. For instance, we are taking over the work that sometimes did not work, and we have to embrace that. We need to build around that, and those are the challenges that Boldare can help you with. But obviously, I cannot share this in like 5 minutes.
Sure, obviously. Guys, we also encourage you to email us hello@boldare.com. We can always arrange one-on-one consultation on a specific problem that you might be having. So it's worth to remember that. Okay, and we have also a question from Celine, how to check if a company has capabilities and skills to scale a monolithic app.
So that's a question I really like, because as soon as you ask it, and if you ask it internally and you still don't know, so people you ask also feel like insecure about it, that's the answer, or that you don't have the skills, you don't have the knowledge, and you need to look for a partner that will guide you through it. And I like this metaphor that you can obviously walk through the desert, but you can also get a ride through the desert and get there quicker. So that's what I like to think of our services at Boldare.
And there was also in the chat section question from Rahel. Can we go into more details on the small steps that IT can take when the business pressures to deliver new features?
Oh, the pressure. I love it, right? So you got the deadlines and you are taught to deliver, but there is like not enough tools or and so on. That really depends on the team and the product, right? But you will see it in metrics, I would say. So whenever you get like 2 failed sprint goals, so to say, that's really a warning sign. Obviously, someone can trip once, but if teams trip twice, and for instance, for sprints of 2 weeks long, it means a month of not delivering value. That's really, really a problem. So this is where you will look for retros. So we got retrospectives in Scrum. So you, as a person who might not participate in them, you might ask if they will share with you the struggles, the problems, and you need to address them, because basically it slows them down to that extent. They are not delivering, they are not feeling happy, because usually on the retro, so you also rank your happiness because you care obviously about the software engineers, and you ask how happy they are with what they did. And usually when they are not delivering, they also are not happy. So you need to like both look at your people and your application. And this is where you will find your little steps to get better. And the successful companies, as I call them, are those who quickly identify this by metrics, let's say 2 failed sprints or any other metrics you will invent. There are a handful of approximations. At Boldare, we do metrics recently, like all over the place. So there are maybe data experts that are more knowledgeable how to identify issues better than me. But basically, as soon as you know, you should act. So that's where the small steps will come from.
Great advice, Mateusz. Thank you so much, guys. That is all we have time for today. You can always, you can always email us at hello@boldare.com. Please remember also to follow us on LinkedIn for more information about events coming up soon. Thank you so much.
Thank you.